Hey, 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 it's Rebecca, and you're listening to Resilient by Design. Okay, we are right smack dab in the middle of our course launch for Power of Process. The doors close on March the 11th at midnight. So please get your butts over to RebeccaHay.com/Power of Process, and you can find out more about this incredibly powerful course. I did it for the first time in the fall/winter, and it was so well received, and I got so many incredible results from students that we are launching it right on the tails of the last one. So I really hope you guys will join us. Today's episode, if you're on the fence, is probably going to help you. I'm interviewing two of my star students from the course. I'm interviewing Colleen Shire of Spruce Interiors and Laura Thornton of Thornton Design. They both have over 20 years of experience in the interior design world, and yet they both are doing my courses. Colleen was a Momentum member back last summer, and then she joined for Power of Process, and Laura joined Power of Process for the first time. And you get to hear from them in their own words, their experience. What I will say is really interesting about this episode is that Colleen is a solo designer, doesn't have a team, and she comes to this with a very different perspective, whereas Laura has a team and has her own studio, and so she comes to the course with a different perspective. So this course is really not, it's for beginners, it's for people in the middle, it's for people who are experienced and have been doing it over the years. I mean, if you were just starting out, oh man, I wish there was something oh my God, I get so passionate. You've no idea how much I wish I had this when I started my business. Oh my God, I'd be in a different place. I would be retired. I don't know. But seriously, it's possible. Or if you already have a process, someone like Laura came to this course already having her own process, but really wanted to fine tune it. And y'all let them share with you in their own words how they took what they learned in Power of Process and applied it to their own businesses. So enjoy this episode. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Are you as tired as I am working in a bubble? I mean, shoot. It's time to maybe socially distance with other people. That is why I love coming to the Collective Workspace. If you are someone who is looking for a little bit of stimulation, a lot of beauty, the Collective Workspace is a really great place to go. It is a co-working space for designers, architects, and builders in Toronto, and they're opening a second location this spring. They have flex workspace and offices starting at $120 a month. There's boardrooms, a podcast booth, which is where I am right now, concierge, storage, and a trade-only design library. You can find out more, or if you want to book a tour, go to thecollectiveto.com. I am here with two dynamic women, Colleen and Laura. And why don't we just start with you telling everybody a little bit about yourselves? Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay, Laura. She's been volunteered by Colleen. You too. This is going to be an interesting one. You guys are coming in hot today. I love it.
So my name is Laura Thornton. I have been a designer on my own for 20 years. I own Thornton Design. We're a studio in Kleinburg, but we do service all of the GTA and anywhere else beyond that you would like us to go. We are about 50-50 this year, residential, commercial. It does vary slightly, but we do cater to both.
Awesome. Awesome. And how many years have you been in business? You want to share with us?
For myself, 21. Yeah. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, 21.
Awesome.
There was a bit of overlap. So I did start in the commercial world on my own on the side, and then finally went out on my own.
Very cool.
And I found you via Instagram and have been in your course and part of the Society of Designers and your pop course. And all of it has been a great experience so far.
You're in the little bubble. You're in my little cocoon.
Yes. Yes.
We're so happy to have you. All right, Colleen.
Under your wing. My name is Colleen Shire. I'm the owner of Spruce Interiors, and I started Spruce Interiors. It used to be Spruce Designs 15 years ago, and I started out styling, staging, and then I went back to school, took the George Brown program, and I've been on my own ever since, and I've been mostly solo. I've hired freelancers over the years, and I've mostly worked from home, but unlike everybody else this year, I decided to find an office, and now I work out of a studio over in the Castlefield Design District. And I do all residential. I've never done commercial. So
awesome. Thank you for introducing yourselves. I want us to talk about that a little bit later, actually, that commercial residential. I think that's interesting, Laura, that you do both. So we can, if there's time, we're going to dig into that one. The reason I had you guys on the podcast, not only are you dynamic, fun women that I've just relatively recently gotten to know, is that you both just completed, as Laura mentioned, POP, which is Power Process, POP. And I really would love to hear, because it's actually quite fresh. We literally just finished, technically the course finished before Christmas, but we had sort of a week layover into January for us all to kind of catch up and see where we were at. And I really want to hear from you, like where you're at, how things are going. And one thing I will add is that Colleen did Momentum with me. So you did Momentum last summer, which was a different course, which we are going to launch again. We're going to overhaul the whole course. So we'll be coming at you for some tips and things. But that was more of a marketing business course. And then Power Process was a process course. So I guess maybe Colleen, if you want to start, I'd love to hear, because that sort of the idea actually for Power Process came out of the Momentum members, because a lot of you were struggling with this idea of having a process and just sort of what does that really mean and what does it really entail? And so it was because of you guys, thanks to you, that I created Power Process. And I'm so happy I did, because obviously it's been very instrumental in my business. And it's really neat to see how different people and how it's helping them. So I'd just love to hear your experience, I guess. Colleen, if you want to talk a bit about Momentum, you can, because they kind of are connected.
Sure. That rings so true for me, because I think I found you on Instagram. I know that. And I joined the Momentum group, not so much that I wanted to dive into marketing, but I needed a bit of I think it had been like 6 months of COVID, and I really just needed a kick in the butt. And I found you to be very authentic and very genuine and very generous. And it was such a wonderful group dynamic. And that's what, and we did talk a lot about process. And we all needed process. And then when you came out with the POP program, it was just a natural that I would want to register into that. But the marketing, I mean, it's not that I changed a lot of marketing that I do or don't do, or that I felt I really needed that, but I really needed motivation at that point. The process really hit hard for me. It was very impactful. I used it from the moment we had our first session. And I continue to use it, and I continue to go back and forth and tweak it. Although I haven't finished the whole thing myself, I started using it right away in little tiny increments. So it was valuable that way. It was a natural offshoot from Momentum for me.
That's amazing. And I love that you say that, because like not everybody can go through and complete the course. Like I did an interview with Steve Ryan, and he said that he dedicated like certain days and times, like he's so regimented. He was one of the first people to finish the course before anybody else. But a lot of people are doing it in their own time. And I think that that's important to understand, that that's okay too. You don't have to be doing it at the same time. I think even in Momentum, the same thing happened. Even though it was live coaching, the exercises, not everybody was catching up, but there's that feeling of I can do it because I'm in this group setting and seeing this. And like, I want to talk about a couple of your wins that I remember from like the Facebook group. We'll get there. I love that. Like, what a dream student. You immediately apply what you learn. Yes.
I want.
Call if you can't see us. Colleen keeps raising her hand like, "Hey, pick me.
I don't want to overlap." I will say you did an exercise at the very beginning of the Momentum series. It might have been the very first day where we discussed what our 10-year, our plans are and our goals are, and that was incredibly impactful for me. And so that's where it started for me. That's where it really, and I think going into the whole process thing, I've got my process now that I try to implement, but the point of it was also that I'm always thinking about it and analyzing it and like watching it from above, watching myself objectively go through this process. So it's almost ever changing. I think that's a valuable thing to take away from any sort of education. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Oh, so much love today.
Very welcome.
We'll just keep passing it around. So Laura, I'm curious, like, what was your experience? You were new to the sort of Rebecca Hay bubble, because you didn't do Momentum. And how was your experience with Power Process? Do you find yourself doing that, kind of like looking over? I mean, you have a team. You've been in business for a long time. How did that help you in your business?
Well, I think the first thing I really liked about it was actually the opposite of what Colleen was. I liked that it was a little more structured. Like I like to keep up with it and have it scheduled, that if you were going to have an online meeting about it, that it triggered me to get my tush in gear and get it done. Because if it was something for me and the way my schedule works, if I don't have it written down as that's something that we're going to do at 10 o'clock tomorrow, then it just probably will never happen. If it's scheduled, I will get it done. If it is in the calendar, I will show up. I will be there. But if it's not there, then it would be very easy for a year to now to say, oh yeah, I signed up for this course that I didn't follow through with. So for me, I liked that it was shorter. I think, Rebecca, you and I had talked about how we were both members of the BOD design, and that was for me a little too loosey-goosey because I just never get back to it. I'll never fit it in. Where I liked that your process was a shorter commitment, a few weeks. I can always go back and look at it and reference all the material that you were so generous with sharing, which is fantastic. But I did find that our processes were similar. It was fantastic to almost solidify that it was a good way. Because again, when it was just me for so long before I had a team, every single project was a little different. And I was about as structured as a noodle. Like, I'd be like, let's try it this time like this. And then the next time, so let's try and nothing was ever really consistent. So when you have a team start rolling in, and now I'm supposed to expect them to know what I'm thinking and what I want, all I'm doing was setting them up to fail. So I needed to have this structure. And so it was great that we had done a lot of things the same way. We had taken out some steps that are still in the process that just don't need to be labeled or named. You're 7, I'm 9 steps, but they're very similar. And I think it was great, a great thing to see, and also to learn what you had cut and what you had done that was redundant. And we were able to implement that quickly. So I just enjoyed the community, the chatting, the learning, and other things as well. In addition to the process, it was just the smaller things. And like I said, you were very generous with your templates and the marketing material, even in that program, that was super helpful, because there isn't anywhere else to grab it and learn it, and people aren't sharing. And it was such a great tool. And again, even one step further, now we have people, like I've been chatting with Colleen, and it's been a great way to get to know other people doing the same thing we're doing that are willing to share, so that we all benefit, which is fantastic.
I love that you say that, because it's like attracts like, right? And so for me, I think it's been really encouraging, because when I started in the business, just like you, I love that I was as structured as a noodle, which, by the way, noodles don't have structure, right?
Yeah.
Especially spaghetti noodles. But I gotta use that. I'll give you credit though. That's a good one. And I didn't have access to collaboration. I worked for a designer and then was on my own and was trying to figure it out. And it took me a long time to develop relationships because people are very tight-lipped and very closed. I know I interviewed Maya Rafi for the podcast, and she was talking about that when she worked for a firm. They'd go to parties, and their principal would say, remember, at the party, you don't give away our sources. Don't tell anyone where we get things from. And I do think that the industry has come a long way. It's still not there where I think a lot of us would like it to be. And so I love that we're able to share. Like, I've always been an open book. It's just who I am. And so there's that thing about the design industry just never really gelled with me. And, it's interesting. The more I start to share, the more comfortable I am with doing it. Because at first people question, like, why are you doing this thing? And why are you giving them? I'm like, it's not like they're my competition. Like, I have my clients, they have their clients. We're all very unique in our design aesthetic. We live in different regions. Like, even in Power of Process, there was people from Montreal, Kamloops, London, England, California, Vancouver, like all over the place, right? And it's just so cool to see. So I agree. Okay, this is really interesting. I didn't even think about this, but I love that you two are paired together for this podcast. Paired, like we planned it or something. Well, maybe. But like Laura, it's so interesting. You are the person who says that you went through the course, you made sure you did all the programs and you wanted to stay on top of it. And then there's Colleen who's like, I'm just going to do it in the time frame that works, like whatever. And you're a noodle. She's our little noodle. We're going to call this the noodle episode.
Bit of a noodle.
Bit of a noodle. And also it's interesting because, Laura, you mentioned you have a team, and Colleen, you're a solo. So I think a lot of people listening are going to get a lot out of this episode because you both come from very different places, both very experienced in your field, but doing it very differently. I'd like to talk a little bit more specifics. I know, Colleen, I'm not trying to freak you out, but just like specifically, was there anything that hit you on the head when you were doing the course that you changed immediately? Like, Colleen, you just said, Colleen has like both hands up. You said you weren't going to be able to talk about specifics, and here you are, hands in the air.
Double hands.
That discovery call script.
That's not even part of the course, though. That's just a freebie.
No, it didn't matter to me. It came from you as part of the Power of Process. That whole how to start it off, talking about the consultations, charging for the consultations. But that discovery call was a game changer for me. And I started doing that. It was a little tiny thing. It was a shift. It was a game shifter for me.
Awesome. Yeah, the discovery. So if anyone who's listening doesn't have this, you can get it. Just go to RebeccaHay.com/discover. What is it called? Shoot.
Discovery call.
Discovery call. I think it's just /discovery call. I will look it up right now. It's a freebie. No. I didn't there's no spoiler here. Anyone can have it. Colleen's like,
it wasn't part of the Power Process.
No, but we talk about it in Power Process. But it is the script itself is a free download.
Okay.
On my website, but I think in Power of Process we go into a lot more detail.
Okay, yeah. That rings a bell.
We do definitely go into detail about the discovery call, but the script, and maybe that's what you're talking about, but there is a script that anyone can download, and I'm just trying to find it right now. I think it's called Discovery Call. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just found it was a reset button for me. Oh, hi, instead of like, oh yeah, you're a friend of Sally's, and sure, I'll come on over on Thursday and see your space, and I bring my tape measure, and there we go. We have lots to find out before I'm even going to look at my calendar. Yeah. So it just took me down a notch from being so reactive.
And do you find that now the more you do these discovery calls, like the better and easier it gets to kind of
Absolutely. It means that I am more they take me more seriously because I'm very organized. I sound very professional. I've got some hard questions to ask them. What is your budget? I'm not budging until I know about the budget, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it often morphs into, well, in the last, whatever it's been, 6 months, it has always morphed into a consultation. And that has typically morphed into a project. So it's a game changer. And I've had one where I went and I did the consultation afterwards, which was the next game changer. And she didn't take me up on it, but I didn't feel badly about it because I had charged her for the consultation. There was a structure.
Yes.
There was a process.
I'm going to ask a question because there's something going on with one of my designer friends in the city right now, and I'm giving her a hard time. Did you, did this person pay? Do you collect payment prior to the consultation? Oh, Colleen. Dang it.
It's not the power of perfection. Right?
Oh, tell that to my husband. He thinks that's funny.
What do you say? You always say
progress over
progress, not perfection.
So that let's challenge you. We'll have you back in a few months.
Okay.
Let's challenge you to collect the money up front. So if a designer friend of mine just did a consultation, put it together a proposal, and the client said, we can't afford your fees. But can you just please send us the invoice for your consultation? And my designer friend said, well, I was only there for 40 minutes. Like it was one of those, like, some consultations are just in and out and the client's like, okay, that's great. We're ready to go. And so now she's feeling guilty to invoice them and feels like she should discount. And of course, I said, don't discount. And also, P.S., why didn't you collect the money up front? Because if they had prepaid for your consultation, you wouldn't have this guilt of how do I now handle this money situation? Mm-hmm. So anyone who's listening, obviously charge for your consultation. But if you can collect the fees, even if it's at the consultation.
How about like 2 hours later?
Because
that's what I did.
Don't pay. So I've had it where the person just ghosted me. And I spent 2 hours, like, who does that, right? People do that. Yeah.
That did happen to me once where I went to the consultation and it was only about 45 minutes or an hour. And I billed her for $550 and it was fine. And I got the job. So
yeah. And most of the times it's fine. But in our heads, we have this fear that we're not providing the value, right? Even though we are. What about you, Laura? Have you had any like specific examples of kind of takeaways?
I was just thinking about twice it's happened to me in years where I've shown up and they forgot that I had. Yeah. I was before I was charging for my time. So clearly I'm not a priority, but I've just lost the driving time, the gas, the time I stood at the door. Like, did I get it wrong? I'm looking for the date, the time, the emails. And meanwhile, I was not even on their radar. Mm-hmm. So that was a big lesson, but I still didn't do it for a couple of years after that. So now we do that. We do bill ahead of time. I don't show up unless it's paid for. And it's a 2-hour consultation. We charge $6.95 for the 2 hours. And we've never not gotten a job. So
awesome.
Fingers crossed. I think too, it's like anything, if they're calling you and we're word of mouth, I don't advertise. So people already know where we fall, and what we do. So I feel like they're coming in already educated. So if they're prepared to have us show up for the 2 hours at that rate, we know that we are going to be doing something together. Mm-hmm. But yeah, even like you said, the 45 minutes, but she still drove there and her time and she put the proposal together. Like that is your time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had that same experience when I made an exception. I was charging for consultations, but I made an exception for a realtor who had given me business in the past. And I showed up and she'd forgotten. And I called her, oh, was that today? Because you're right. When they're not paying for something, they're not going to value it. And it's not a priority.
And how do you do it again the next time? Well, wait a sec. You didn't charge me the last time you did this. So I find that's a bit of a disconnect too. Now that we do that, I'm like, that's what we do now. That's how the business has evolved. I know 10 years ago, I didn't do that, but that is how we operate now. And that is, I have to not be that noodle. More a little al dente.
Yeah. Okay, I'm half cooked. It's a game changer.
You know what? The process, I still feel like, even though we have a process and we've got literature and things that, we hand out, it is ever organic. It is hopefully never going to be a stagnant line. Like it should have some organicness to it in some capacity. And I'm finding that that is still the case. Every project is a little bit, but now we have a straighter path, a little bit more of a directive. But I don't think it's ever going to be set in stone for periods of time. I think it'll ever be changing, which is a good thing for me.
Yeah, totally. And I think that I was chatting with Crystal Collinson recently for her podcast, and she was saying the same thing. And she's been doing this for 20 plus years. And she said, like, she's still constantly looking to change and evolve and improve and grow. And she has, a team, and she has freelancers, and it's just figuring out the different roles, because that's always changing. And to me, it's always like a nice relief to hear somebody else say that, because we're all like, as great as as great as the process that I have is now, I know that it's constantly going to evolve with the type of jobs that we do. As I change and grow as a human, it has to be, it's not something that is set in stone. Although, with that said, I think having a structure is really key. And if you can try and follow that structure, and then you can't change things up every project, because then it's not a process anymore. It's just, you're changing how you do things. So for us, like, we stuck with a process for a while before we decided to overhaul and tweak a few things. Especially, and I don't know, Laura, if you can speak to this, but having a team, I've learned the hard way, as I do most of my life, that I like to share my lessons, but it's very confusing for them. So it's hard for them. And I'm typical visionary. So I'm the one who's like, I've got this great idea. You know what? Let's not do it that way anymore. Let's do it this way. And like, now we're going to follow a process. And they're just like, they've got whiplash because they can't keep up with me. And so I've learned, and I'm still learning, that to have some structure and then introduce changes gradually and slowly that make sense, and I've learned to bring my team on early in that sort of thought process and slow down a little bit. It's something I'm working on, is like slowing down my role. Like right now I'm looking to hire a new role for a company, and the old Rebecca would have already posted it on Indeed, right? But this time around, I really want to be thoughtful. I really want to visualize who this person is, what their personality is, how they're going to make my life easier and better before I start interviewing. It's like that whole like hire slow, fire fast, that type of thing. Yeah. Colleen, I remember, so this is one of the things that stuck out in my mind in the Facebook group. I think it was in the Zoom call during the course. You said that you had a concept. I think it was a concept presentation. Was it a concept review that you were doing for the first time? Right?
Oh, right. Yes, at the beginning.
Was it the beginning?
Before Christmas. No, it was just before Christmas.
Before Christmas. Yeah. And you were like, for the first time, because that's one of the steps in my process that I share, is concept review. Can you like tell me about that experience? I don't think I got to chat with you after the fact.
Well, it was also after the formal presentation. So I went in, and for the very first time, it was all out. It had all been organized. And we put it with our masks on, we put it on her island, and we went around room by room totals only. Thank you.
You like fast forward, girl. Look at you go. You are a quick learner.
I love that one. So room totals only. And, Laura's probably been doing it this way forever. And then the week later, on the Thursday, as I told her I would, I phoned, and we just reviewed it over Zoom. And there was maybe a couple of things. So we've been implementing it ever since.
Amazing.
There's a bit of construction. There's a lot of furniture. So things got a bit messed up with COVID. But it was doing that review took so much stress away from me, because I wasn't used to being as uncollaborative with a client.
I remember you had resistance.
Yes. Oh, I had.
You were resistant. You were like, I don't think I can do it without them being involved. I remember, and you know what? I think this is a good point to bring up, because I think a lot of designers feel the same way.
Yeah.
They pride themselves as being collaborative. I used to always say that. I'm like, we're a collaborative design firm. And then I thought about it. I'm like, no, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not at all.
And I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
But I am, like I say, I just keep doing it the way that I've been taught. So I laid it all out. Sure enough, there's no hesitation. Maybe that and maybe that, couple of things, bit of fabric, a bit of, I forget what it was. And went back the next week with the alternatives and did the review, that was at the review. A couple of things came up and we've rectified them, but it just flowed. And I don't know how you do it without that review. And so now I do that once a week with this client because her project has continued. Just because we're not keeping in touch like we used to. And now I know it's once a week.
So you're reviewing all the materials with her in her house once a week?
No. It's just a Zoom. It's just a phone call. Okay. Oh no.
Like touch base.
Just touch base. This is what's going on because the guys are there doing some construction. We've had some obviously huge issues with selecting fabric and stuff. And so I've just been getting in touch with her once a week to say, okay, any concerns? Here's updates on delivery times. And
that's been a game changer for our team. When I interviewed my team, I said, what is one of the things? And one of the things that came up was having a weekly update, a status update. So like updating the client every single week, even if there's nothing to update. It's just like they know they're going to hear from us. We used to do it Fridays. I don't know what day. Do you have a certain day of the week you always do it on?
You told me Thursday, so I do it on Thursday
too.
Yeah. So we did Friday, but then I found people would be like getting home from work on a Friday night and then nobody wants to let the client leave them hanging for the weekend. And I tell my team like no emails on the weekend. So Thursday is a great time to do it. Yeah. Awesome. Oh my goodness. Okay. Laura, is there anything else? Like you already had a process. So I don't know. What did you tweak in your process after going through the course?
Well, even just what Colleen had said, Laura does it. I'm like, no, Laura doesn't do it, but it is on the list for 2021 because I was doing things down to like light bulbs, like for 20, like if there is a lamp, there is a light bulb line right underneath it in my summary. Whereas is it necessary that I have the light bulb, even though I know that that was our goal too for 2021 is to have a room total when appropriate. Like sometimes I think the number might be too high and they need to see where some of the dollars and cents are going. But the goal is to limit that until needed. And then even invoicing would be just a room name with a total. Like how dreamy would that be instead of itemized, right? So So no, Laura doesn't do it, but Laura's going to.
Yeah, Laura sounds pretty organized to me from what I've heard.
Cool. Yeah.
So it's like that. There's small things, even though the process stays, the steps stay the same. There's small things within that the client isn't any of the wiser, but it really makes us more efficient.
Yeah.
That's always the goal. That's always why I sign up for whether it's a book or listen to a podcast or your program. There's always something to take away. Always.
Yeah, totally. It's, really, when I started developing a process, it was selfish. It was for me. It was for my team. I didn't even have a thought about how it would help the client. Like, to be completely honest, I wasn't thinking about the client. I was so like, I'm sure you guys get it. Like, you're just so absorbed in your own world. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. There just has to be a better way. Like, I feel so disorganized. And then it's almost like the offshoot of that, or whatever that word is a word. What's the word? The like, the
offshoot.
The offshoot.
There's a better word though. Anyways, and is that it positively improved the client's experience. Yeah.
Which makes you feel good and more professional.
Yeah, totally. And in case anyone who's listening doesn't know what we're talking about with room totals, what that is essentially, and we've just started doing it on most, not all, but most projects, instead of presenting line items with like a price to go with a sofa, a price to go with the lamp, with a light bulb, and all the things, I will just put the total of the room. So they can see the sum, like they can see all the parts, and then they see the sum of all the parts. So it says like living room sofa, and you give a description, living room, I don't know, end tables, coffee table, area rug, drapery, and then a room total. And often what we do is we include all the little things. And so just like you said, Laura, with the lamps, we include the light bulbs within the price, the total price of the lamp. We also include within the drapery hardware. Now they're not seeing it, so it doesn't really matter, but just even for us. And then, like you say, if there's a time when, and this happened to us last year, where room totals seemed to be working fine until they weren't. And all of a sudden the client wanted to figure out how they could save more money. And then we sent them the breakdown, but we had the breakdown. And ultimately that client didn't end up going ahead for whatever reason. But it was interesting. It's a different type of client too. So if you have a very budget conscious client, they may not be okay with room totals. Like I have clients in the past that I'm pretty sure if I'd shown them a room total, they'd be like, well, you're trying to like slip one past us. Like this isn't going to work. We want to know where we can save every penny. Whereas a client who has a bit more understanding of what things cost, and part of that is our job to educate them. But when they have a better understanding, I think they're probably more accepting of a room total. Yeah.
I compared it to going to Costco. I go to Costco for milk and I come out with a $500 bill. But when I look at the bill, it makes perfect sense. Right. Okay, great. Yes, I did that. So if they do, I can see it because sometimes it, and I never give budget. If someone says, what do you budget for a living room? I will never give a budget. You will never hear. Why would I set myself up with a budget? If there wasn't one given, we're going to not do that. But it's that to me. If I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, all of that makes sense. I'm good. I'm fine. But it's the shock of it when you go in for the milk and then you come out with flippers that you didn't need, but you get my point, right? Like hopefully they need everything that we put on it. Yeah. Like right down to delivery. Like I put the delivery fee right into it right from the get-go. I don't do an allotment. I hate allotments. I make sure that my client knows what they're getting. If I've made a mistake, that's on me, but they know exactly what that project is going to cost. And if they want the itemized, I'll pass it on.
But do you use a receiver?
I do not.
Okay. You should use a receiver. Really?
I've never needed to.
Like decorating installations and stuff?
Nope.
You just have individual vendors deliver at the same time? Or how do you do it?
Same day. Yeah. All of our furniture is custom. We don't buy anything at a retail level as far as soft goods. Case goods, we would have it all delivered the same day or the day before. We'd stagger it between 2-day installation. But I've never used one. I have them and they're in our vendor list as something that we could use if needed, but we haven't never needed it at this point.
That's awesome. Well, that's a savings for sure. Well, then you can predict. Because with the receiver, you can't really predict because it's an hourly and until you do it.
Right.
But yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that knowing the numbers is important to have. I can tell you though, the room totals would never have worked before I had my concept review. Because the concept and budget review is where I've already gone through and itemized everything on our end and given a budget number so that the client has an idea of what to expect. If I tried to go in like guns a-blazing with room totals and we hadn't really finalized the budget, because often I was over budget on projects, then I 100% can envision the questions that would have come. Right? Okay, so we're 100,000 over budget and you're only telling us room totals? Like, what gives? So for those who are listening, if you want to attempt this, just be smart about it. Don't be like, Rebecca, you told me to do it and it didn't work. It backfired. Yeah.
No, it definitely works.
So, okay. So I'm so happy to hear that everything went well. I know you guys loved the course. You guys were very like active members. Colleen, you were like always engaging and getting everyone chatting. And I think that's kind of one of the things that makes me sad when the course is over, to be honest with you, because there's such a great, like a little bit of a camaraderie. You're seeing the same faces every week. Showing up in the Facebook group, we always kind of know who I can like rely on to answer the questions when everyone's sitting there staring at me blankly in his room, right? I'll be like, Colleen, I know she'll say something. You don't usually raise your hand though, do you?
I'm so conscious that I'm going to say something and voice over you.
Okay, just talk. It's okay.
Okay.
But what else was I going to say? I do want to talk about this concept of residential and commercial, because you did mention this, Laura, at the beginning, and it's a little bit of a departure from talking about the course, but I think it's really interesting because I recently talked to somebody and they were saying that the two types of work cannot exist in the same type of design firm. So they were saying, commercial is commercial, residential is residential. It's really hard to do both. Can you speak to that?
Sure. I mean, it might depend on what type of commercial they're doing. I started in commercial, so that's what I knew straight out of school. And then the second part of that was I was doing commercial spaces, and then like the executives would come to me and be like, can you go visit my wife on like Saturday or what. Oh, okay. So then I started to like go to their houses secretly because I was working for somebody else on weekends. But they never wanted photographs. They didn't want anyone else to know that they were all. So meanwhile, there'd be like 6 executives and I'm doing 3 of their houses at the same time. So there just was this overlap that kind of happened that way. Commercial is very different because it's very detached. It's not their money. It's not, well, most times, it's not their money. It's a very different connection that way. So a lot of it is just trust. They just trust you. So it does, except for I got bored of that. I don't know why. So I got bored of that after 7 years. And then I went solely into residential. And then it came back into my life kind of organically the same way. I was doing someone's home who owns a rather large business and said, would you come do one of our commercial plants, like the front offices? And I was like, sure. So then I went and did that. And then it ended up doing all of their plants and all like, so it kind of just went exactly the same way. So, I find that it's a lot easier. There isn't the connection. There isn't the headaches or the having to explain a whole lot, but you lack the challenge. So I know it sounds dreamy, but everything just started to be like, what do I want to try to do today? Which wow. I know it sounds ideal, but at the end of the day, it can be boring. Mm-hmm. So, I think that it's a great balance right now for us because really has changed. Like people's offices are no longer the cubicles. Like they want a personality. They want it to be part of their branding and their marketing. So that has come in twofold where you see a little bit of overlap with the residential elements, but I enjoy it. We somehow have had a niche into the food market. So we do a lot of I don't touch the factory element, but I do all of their front of house, like all of their private offices, their boardrooms, all of their spaces that way. And so it's been a good complement. So we can do a lot more of the commercial end in a year that will balance out our residential. So it depends. We're usually somewhere in the gamut of 40 to 60% every year. Sometimes it's closer to 70, but we still have a good balance. And I don't find that it's a big disconnect. I find you use a lot of the same materials. Right. Obviously, the usage would be like the material longevity is a factor, but once you know them, you start to use and get used to the types of products that you would use. But I do find a lot of it overlapping now.
So do you find with your commercial projects that you follow your 9-step process, or is that exclusive for residential?
The paper, we have marketing elements that we send out to our clients that basically break down the steps. I would not send that to the commercial end, pardon me. So it's not needed. They don't care.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary. We still do it internally. There is still this process that we follow. But would I send them the marketing materials that write out everything we're going to be doing all the way along? No.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. No, I find that really interesting because we were doing quite a bit of builder work, like builder developer work. And it sounds very similar to commercial in the sense that it's not their money. There's a budget. And it's not as personal. So they're not coming in and saying, oh, wow, like that coffee table looks a little bit darker brown than I thought in the presentation. Like they're like, it's brown. It looks great. It looks great. That's we're paying you to make it look great. We trust you. And so it's very different from a relationship standpoint. But also for a while, I started to wonder, like, do I need to kind of like tweak how we run our business to fit this different type of business model? Because it is slightly different. I'm sure it's not at all like commercial, but I'm always curious. And, I'm not going to change anything. I'm trying to stick with our process because when I veer from it, I always regret it. How much for you guys do you find having, Laura, for you, like a more established process and like Colleen, a relatively new one, how much do you think it helps you stay organized versus helps your clients value what you do? Like, could you give it a percentage?
I think it's 100% me. I don't think they care.
No, that's great.
I think it's all for me. I think I do think that it looks great that you've got all this marketing material and that you do have a process. And isn't that wonderful? And I do think it gives them the confidence in you. Absolutely. I don't know if not ever has anyone said, what step are we at?
Yeah.
Where are we in the process? Like, no one's ever asked me where we are. They just say, are we on track? Yep, we're on track. We're going to get you back into your home on this day as planned. That's all they care about. But I did it initially for myself, as we discussed earlier. Like, I didn't want to feel like what's happening tomorrow. And then I did it for staff, in bringing people in to help and to be confident in what they're doing. And that's where it's really benefited. So that's why I say I think it's 100% for us, because I ran for a long time process free, like a noodle, as we talked about. But it is like, nobody asked me. As long as I wasn't spending their money in an obscene way and they were getting into their home, everybody was happy. So it's for me, 100% for me. And I'm okay. I'm okay with that. It's all good because it makes me feel confident in what I'm doing, which translates to the client and the project.
Yeah. Confidence. So much for confidence. What about you?
I would say it was totally for me. I haven't even really talked very much about my process with the projects I've taken on since I was involved in the power process. I think if I went back to I've got a lot of repeat clients. And so if I went back to clients I hadn't dealt with for 4 years, and actually that's happening right now, they might see a difference in me. They might not know how to label it, like what stage are we at now? What part of the process are we at now? But they might go, wait a minute, something's different here. You're not so collaborative. But it's good. I like that.
What happened to the noodle?
Oh, exactly.
What have I done?
She was so fun. She didn't want money up front. He went for months and months.
You're like, this is what it looks like when I actually make money in my business.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's the other thing. Sorry, it's your script, but that's the other thing that I have said a couple of times about profit. And I have said straight out to people about sharing discount. Well, I used to do that, but I found it wasn't profitable. And you know what the reaction is? Oh, okay. Makes sense. Really? It makes sense. Wow.
And you're thinking to yourself, why have I been sharing my profit all this time?
So let me get this straight. It would have made sense 10 years ago. Wow.
Better now than never.
Yeah, exactly.
Girl.
Exactly. Yeah. Forever learning.
Yeah. That's when I realized people weren't asking me anymore. And here I was offering on a silver platter. Yeah. Oh, and we share our discounts. Yeah. And after a while, you guys know the story, but my office manager was like, you can't do that. You're not going to make any money. And so I'm like, now that I think about it, like the last 3 projects, they didn't actually ask me. I just offered it like a dummy. Yeah. So I'm just going to stop doing that. You're right.
The last project I spoke with. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. People are respectful. They will understand. Like if they're good, honest people and you say, I need to make a living and this is my business model. Yeah. Okay. Tell me about the project.
The last client that I had this conversation with, she came right out and said, the last designer we dealt with, she shared our designer discounts with us. And I went, well, yeah, I used to do that too, but I didn't find it to be profitable. And she said, okay.
It might have been 1982 because that used to be the big selling feature for designers, right? They used to think it was going to trade off. So how they used to market designers was, you'll get our discount. So that discount's going to equal what it would cost us. So you're basically getting us for free. Yeah. That's how people used to sell their services, which maybe that was the last time they used a designer. I don't know. But I think that was how it very much used to be sold.
Probably.
Our services.
Yeah. Colleen, I just gotta say, good for you, girl. Man, you have seriously grown by leaps and bounds in your business since I met you last summer. Like it is.
I feel like that too. I've made a lot of great changes, and it's going to be a good year this year.
Yeah, it's going to be the best year, especially since you're not sharing your discounts anymore. I can't wait to see. I want to check in with you at the end of 2021 and be like, Kid, you don't have to tell me the number, but what was the percentage? What's your profit margin last year versus this year?
Wow, that's the goal. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, guys, we're about out of time here. So before I sign off, Do you guys have any last nuggets or anything actually maybe to say to somebody who's considering signing up for Power of Process and is maybe on the fence or unsure if it's for them? Do you have any bits of advice?
Do it. Like Nike says, do it. Like you have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah.
Right? It's a no-brainer. You have to do it. It doesn't matter if you're a newbie, which you're going to benefit tenfold, or if you're like Colleen and I, who have been in this industry for quite a while. You're going to gain knowledge. You're going to gain a society of people who will help you with any question you have. And you get Rebecca's expertise. It's worth it.
Aw,
it's a write-off.
Yeah. That doesn't mean it's free, though, just to be clear.
No, oh God,
it's an expense against your
worth every penny.
Yeah, you'll get it back.
I will say too that I probably didn't think much about my process before because I worked alone. Who was looking, right? It was just me. And since I've taken Power Process, I don't know if you know this, Rebecca, I have hired a freelancer and now I'm hiring a second one. So they're not employees. I'm not there yet, but it just keeps going in the right direction. I didn't set out to do that. In the summer when I took Momentum, I did not set out to rent studio space. I didn't set out to change my noodling process. I didn't set out to hire anybody. So
I remember.
And here I am. It came to me once I started with Momentum and the process.
I'm going to cry. You just made my weekend / day. It's not even the weekend yet.
My pleasure.
Oh, Colleen, that makes me so happy.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. You both are amazing. Laura, you are in our monthly community, our membership, and just started that. So we're creating this whole new thing. Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast and for sharing your stories and being so open and honest. It means a lot, as you know, to me to share. Why don't you share with everyone where they can find you if they want to follow you on social media or check out your websites?
I am spruceinteriors.ca, and that's the same as what I am on Instagram.
Instagram, I'm Thornton Design, and it is LauraThorntonDesign.com because Thornton Design was taken. So it's a little longer, but you can find us there. I was very slow on social media.
That's amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. How fantastic were those noodles? I mean, it's so much fun to connect with other people. Stuck here in a pandemic. It's the best we got is Zoom. And these ladies are so phenomenal. I mean, Colleen's story, just seeing where she's come from when I first met her last summer to where she is now with her business, it just fills my heart. I don't even have the words to describe this immense sense of pride and joy and excitement that I feel for her. And then Laura having come at this program with already having her own process and saying that, it's been completely invaluable and it's changing even her perspective of her already existing process. I mean, I love these ladies. And I love all of the people who come and join and partake in our community. And I just feel like a big noodle full of love today. Anyhow, if you guys enjoyed this episode and you really want to dive right in or at least investigate, Power of Process is open until March the 11th at midnight. And you can go check it out at RebeccaHay.com/Power of Process. And the link, of course, will be in the show notes. I do hope to see you guys inside there. It's just a real great game changer. And part of me quickly launching it again is that it's the beginning of the year. And I want to launch Momentum in the summer. But I sort of feel like this is now the new pre-qualifier to take Momentum. Because once you have your set process nailed down, you are going to be able to market your business at the next level. So if you're on the fence and you're not really sure, I'm sure you could reach out to any of these ladies, either of these two, on Instagram, ask them questions. Guys, sorry, I'm volunteering you to answer questions. Hope that's okay. You could also just send me a DM
I'm always available on Instagram at Rebecca Hay Designs. So if you want to talk to me and find out a little bit more about the course, then please do. And have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.